Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show, and I've got a new guest for the show today from Northisle Copper and Gold is Sam Lee. They have a quite an impressive project. Recently, they did a $40 million financing, and a unique investor in that was Wheaton Precious Metals. Usually they do streams on deals, and this time they became an investor. So we got a lot to talk about. Sam, thank you very much for joining me today.
Hi, Alan. Thanks very much for having me. It's great to speak with you.
Thank you. And so, Sam, we've I've been had North Isle as a pick in my report for about a month or two now. And why don't we just sort of do a quick overview of the story, and then we'll follow it up from there.
Sure thing. So we have a very large, significant copper and gold porphyry in British Columbia, located just north on the northern tip of Vancouver Island. So right on Tidewater. We're just adjacent to the Island Copper BHP, mined it for about 24 years. So all of the infrastructure, the roads, the power, the ports, the town itself, all of that has been put in place for a project of approximately our size. We did come out with a PEA just in February that boasted about a $2 billion NPV after tax, a 29% after tax IRR, a 29-year life of mine. This would produce approximately, it's about almost equally copper and gold with a bit of moly and rhenium. But on a copper equivalent basis, is approximately 157 million pounds of copper, or about 310,000 ounces of gold for those 29 years on an annual basis. So what I would categorize this as a medium-sized copper project with a massive gold byproduct or co-product for those 29 years. It has one of the lowest paybacks, about 1.9 years of payback of that initial capital. So in all respects, this project is an extremely attractive project at the PEA stage, which led to the market effectively sanctioning us to move ahead in quick order, hence the $40 million equity offering and the private placement by Wheaton Precious Metals.
I found that really unique because folks that are not geos or not up on what a streaming company is, most of the time a streaming company buys or helps build a mine, and for that capital they invest, they get a stream of gold, usually at a discount to the price over a long period of time. They help companies build mines, and that Wheaton is the premier company that does that. And but this time they did an investment into you, which is quite unique, Sam.
Yes, indeed. That's a great question. A lot of people don't focus on what that implication is, right? And so, first and foremost, we did not sell the stream to them, right? So this is
Right.
at this point in time, we're too early stage. Our cost of capital would be too large if we were to sell that stream. We all know that, as you get it through pre-feasibility, feasibility, and then final investment decision and into production, that cost of capital contracts tremendously as you de-risk it, right? So we understand that we're not amateurs here on that, and hence we have not sold the stream, first and foremost. The reason behind this alignment and partnership is because we are starting to build our partnership with people, with organizations that have not only capital, but strong brands to help us move this project forward. You already mentioned that they are the premier. They're the largest streaming and royalty company in the world right now. They're about a $60 billion market cap company, which makes them the second largest
Extremely,
precious metal company in the world,
and
only
they're
second to.
extremely well run, and they do extensive homework before they get involved. Sorry for that.
No, absolutely correct. And so it's not only us wanting to be part of their brand, It's they want to be part of our brand. What do I mean by that? Well, we're in British Columbia. Ours project has been recognized as one of the priority projects in British Columbia by the governments. They are the largest public company in British Columbia, mining or other. And so there is a very strong alignment around their role in developing some of the most important projects, not only in British Columbia, but also in Canada. So that brand alignment is extremely powerful. And as we start to build out our consortium of partners, because this is a big project and it requires partnership in order to expedite it. And our partners have started with some of our cornerstone shareholders, of which own about 40% of our stock. We have excellent First Nation partners, governments that really would like to see this project faithfully and responsibly move forward as quickly as possible. Obviously, our provincial, our federal governments are extraordinary partners and have the ability to really enable this project to be expedited. I just came back from a trade mission for which I was invited by the federal government to Japan and Korea to establish these interconnection, these global partnerships that Canada has been talking about for quite some time now in response to our economic independence and our sovereignty. So this is quite an extraordinary invitation to receive for a company of our like. There were only three copper companies that were invited, and the rest were battery metals. And it shows the significance and the importance of this project to British Columbia and Canada. So we will continue to build on these partnerships throughout our courses of de-risking and going to into final investment decision.
As you were explaining this, I know a little bit about your history, and you're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your background, Sam, in the business and
Sure. My background is I'm a metallurgist. My thesis was actually on a copper gold porphyry coming out of Chile. It was actually on a hydromet project on leaching out those commodities using hydrometallurgy in sulfides. But I spent 20 years in the investment banking sphere. I most recently ran CIBC's global mining practice out of Vancouver. I also ran their cross-border ASX, TSX listed business, and also their cross-border Latin American business at one time as well. So, copper gold porphyries, big projects are very familiar to me. I understand certainly what is material in our industry. I understand the that with respect to size, with respect to commodity mix, with respect to some of these emerging themes that didn't see in the last cycle, but we are seeing now, which is this emergence of social license. And the importance of it, and the regression or progression back to tier one countries such as Canada, US, and Australia because of these very strong thematics and initiatives that have really placed an importance on governance, environmental, and just social license. And we're seeing that progression back into these countries, significant activity in that, not only from an M&A perspective, but just from a corporate perspective as well. And so when I started in 2020, almost 5 years ago, the leadership team at the time, Dale Corman, the founding shareholder and chairman of our company, he's been doing this for 70 years. He's just a mining hall of famer, someone that really cultivates, creates, and then expands and develops big projects. Probably the most well-known is Penasquito, as he de-risked that project and then ended up selling it to Glamis Gold Corp for $1.2 billion. Now, one of Newmont's more significant mines. And so we built a team that encapsulates that level of blue chip leadership. On our board, we have two mining Hall of Famers. It's not only Dale Corman, but Alex Davidson, who recently joined us. He was, for most of his 30-year career, he was responsible for growing American Barrick into the Barrick that we know today, as most recently as the EVP of corporate development and exploration. So, and then coupled with that, we have extremely significantly endowed mine builders, including Kevin O'Kane, who worked at BHP for over 35 years. He actually ran the Allan copper mine, the mine that sits adjacent to us, for about 15 years. So he's
Wow.
very familiar with the region. He understands the opportunities. He understands the risks of everything we're going through. And suffice it to say, he's very well equipped to progress this project faithfully, thoughtfully, and quickly. So we do have a leadership team that really is second to none for a company of our size. We're about a $350 million company in market cap. We've grown to that level over the past 5 years through very methodical exploration, successful exploration that's led to this current preliminary economic assessment. But I think the differentiator between us and perhaps any other company of our size is that we have this district play, and this district is over 50 kilometers in size, starting at the Allan Copper Mine, BHP Allan Copper
Before
Mine.
we get into that, Sam, I wanted to make a comment that I get the impression from your investment banking experience, and I'm always a believer that actions speak louder than words. And what I get from that is you've put together the team and you have the path, you've seen the path, you know the path of how to develop a project such as this.
I think that's a great takeaway. I think the if I had to choose one sole responsibility of my role is to build a team. And the team is usually a function of your experience and the people that you've been able to build relationships over your course of your career. And so I do think we've built an incredibly talented team. We just hired Dr. Pablo Mejio from Arrow Copper, so another $2 billion market cap company. His function there was VP exploration, but he also took this incredible skill that he has around data-driven, AI-assisted technology, which we all understand is a very rapidly emerging technology to allow us to start to explore this 50-kilometer district, which I can certainly go into more detail later on. So 100%, I think that the team that has been generated and is going to be expanded now is something that is, again, second to none from the perspective of a junior mining company. Now that we are well capitalized, we have over $45 million in the bank. And we've got very aspirational goals, which again, I'll go into shortly. This is an opportunity for us to expand the team, and you'll be seeing some of those announcements coming up soon.
So I interrupted you there when you were talking about the district, and I love to hear the rock side of the story. I mean, you're building on what you already have and talking about a district. So let's get into that now, Sam.
Yeah, and then it is a function of our leadership, which is what I'm trying to convey is that if you look at our leadership, we're all big company, big thinkers, district guys. Like if you look in the BHP going into the now $10 billion and growing district in the Vicuña district, that's the level of thinking that we have. We don't have this singular purview of one project, a singular project. We are blessed and endowed with this massive district for which we have about 70 years of data. Because it started back in the 50s where the government initiated geological surveys, then it was picked up by Utah, then BHP and Lumina. So there's a lot of rich history in terms of how much data we have over those 7 years that inform what we believe can be the next world-class district. And so we believe what we've defined as the North Island project through the PEA is a starter to the district. 30 years might seem like a very big project to some of you, but for us, people who have been in the industry for quite some time now, we believe this is a bridge to the much, much larger district for which we own 100% of. And so this culmination of people that we currently have and then expanding over the course of the next few weeks and months really is going to show you how important it is for us to answer the question, starter pit to what? If what we have is the first 30 years, well, what's that a starter pit to? And that's something that I think through good exploration, utilization of this data, creating these mathematical correlations, and then most importantly, then associating those correlations with causations based on already existing deposits and historical mines. We've got one historical mine, we've got four deposits, and we've got two discoveries all within that same system, within that same trend. And so to be able to make those those connections between the correlations and causations, that's where we use machine-assisted learning. That's where we use our white box, these people with 200 years of experience to create these connections and to enhance our chances of exploration success. So we are going to be coming out with our exploration plan for the district in the next few months. It is going to be a very cogent, clear, and hopefully successful plan for which we're going to run in parallel with the development of our first 30 years. It is absolutely the chicken and the egg in the sense that we don't think that we are justifying or doing the district a service without the development of the first 30 years, because this is what's in everyone's sights right now, including all the governments, including the world. This is what we can actually use to activate the district as quickly as possible. And the economics obviously suggest a very strong project for which now the market has sanctioned us to move that ahead. And that's exciting, and that's today. But I really don't want people to lose sight of this district play because that is what we currently have. That's our purview, and that is what is going to, make us, quite frankly, relevant to every single entity on the planet.
It's you've got a wonderful problem or a wonderful set of assets there, Sam. It gives you a lot of flexibility and options of your future, uh, you know, that have economic ramifications.
I think you're right, and we can't lose sight of the fact that we have the cash to do it, right? So a lot of people, including us, a few years ago, have very aspirational goals, and we were no different 3, 4 years ago. But we weren't capitalized enough, and we didn't have the critical mass to be able to support that aggressive and aspirational goal. And so every time we get bigger and stronger, and every time we capitalize ourselves like the way we have, and every time we introduce more sort of substantial partners as we grow, that enables us to be able to be more aggressive as it relates to our overall strategy. And that strategy being opening up the district as quickly as possible. And so part of it is market sentiment. I believe that we are on the precipice of going into that second half of the cycle where things are just going to be great for everybody. We are certainly ahead of that curve. We are for the first in line for that macro event to happen. We all seen it, and most recently 2006 to 2011. Well, I see a lot of similarities around M&A activity that we saw at the precipice of the last cycle, 2005. We saw a lot of unsolicited behavior. We saw a lot of multiple competing processes. We saw entrance into the market coming from areas in the world that we just never seen before. So a lot of those themes are starting to emerge right now, which makes me believe we're starting to go into that second half of the cycle. And quite frankly, in the first little bit for last 5 years for us, our clear objective was to be at the front of the line for when that happens. And we grew from a very small company when I first started to a $350 million company today, which is almost a 35 times X since I started. So, we're doing it methodically, we're doing it through good exploration, we're doing it through thoughtful progression. Now we have a great project that the market is sanctioning. Now we have the ability to expand across the district, and now clearly the capital to do so.
Well, you touched on something there that I see a lot in the mining business because a lot of people have the scars like I do of being in the business for 32 years and seeing a bunch of cycles, including the 2001 to 2011 metals bull market. I think that there is something very unique about what's happening now, Sam. On the gold front, 50 years ago, we went off the gold standard, and it took 50 years to break the debt and fiat currency system. And I believe the only way to fix that is with gold as a big backer of all the debt and all the fiat currency. And so I think we're moving back to a gold standard of some kind. I don't know if it will be sanctioned as such, but the central bankers of the East are definitely backing their fiat currencies and their debt up with more gold, which I think is a trend that could last for decades. Now, on the copper front, we've seen the discoveries drop dramatically over the last 20, 30 years, 25 years. The mining business is relying a lot on very old mines that were found in the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. And that supply chain is very constrained. And it's not well prepared for many things, such as rebuilding the infrastructure, the power grid in developed countries, which are relying on old, ancient power grids, in some cases, 100-year-old infrastructure in America. And so there will be a need for a lot of copper for that. You got the copper needs for developing countries. You got the technological needs for internet, cloud computing, all of these various things. Electric vehicles have emerged in the last few years, and that's a trend that will need a lot more copper. You've got artificial intelligence, and that is going to need a massive amount of copper. And then robots and other things are coming down the pike. And I don't think that the supply chain of copper is prepared for what's coming, and or what's here today or what's coming in the near and long term. And so I think that there's a long-term bull market in copper that will last for a very long period of time, much more than 5 years. And I think we're going to need copper at double its current price to incentivize exploration, new mine development. And when you look at the exploration and new mine development pipeline, it's very limited. So all of these things combined, I think I'm making the case that it will last for more than 5 years, Sam.
I couldn't agree with you more on both commodities. It was very, very well said and extremely thoughtful. So let me maybe just make a couple more points, but also reference it to how we position North Isle to those very accurate statements. So on the gold side, I think everything that you've said really justifies and validates the premium that gold usually got historically, but now has re-emerging as part of this very low cost of capital premium valuation behavior that you see not only in cost of capital associated with gold, but also premium valuations as it relates to the equities. Um, this is so incredibly important for North Isle because we are one of the few companies that actually have that currency available to us to bridge a significantly large project. If you have that cost of capital, that's between 0 to 4%. And those are numbers that Wheaton or any other royalty or streaming company will give you at FID. We've seen multiple transactions where streams are sold at the right time for cost of capital of 0 to 4%. And then if it's in production, it's negative, right? So people are actually paying you for this, for lending money to you, which is that inherent value in gold. That's the power of gold. And 45% based on our PEA base case scenario of our product will be gold. At today's current spot prices, it would be closer to 60% of our revenue base will be gold. So that's exceedingly important to understand. Around the copper initiative, as I said, I just got back from Japan and Korea, and these are the things that I just learned. Right now, the Chinese smelters are paying you to send them their feed.
That is a good example of the tightness of the supply chain, folks. If they can't get copper to smelt, it's because the supply chain is constrained.
Correct. And so what then happens to the rest of the smelters in the world? And of course, we all have alliances, and there's certainly some rich history between the Japanese and the Koreans and Canadians. And the Japanese are very discerning in terms of what they need, in terms of their product. And when you have a situation where the Chinese are giving you 10, 10, and 10 for your feed, they're paying you money for your concentrate feed. And you also have the fact that our product, which I haven't mentioned yet, is premium product, which means the copper concentrate is very low in deleterious elements. It's lower than 30 ppm arsenic. It's low in selenium. Gold reports into the copper. So this is really high premium feed. In that environment, you then become a very, very, very coveted product. And then, of course, with what's happening politically and the alignment in Canada around finding global trade partners, and the fact that our project is literally on tidewater, where you do not need to build any more major infrastructure. The road is there, the power is
Right.
there. We have a 100 megawatt wind farm just to the north of us that produces excess capacity into the BC hydro grid within kilometers of our project. We've got multiple ports within a radius of about 10 kilometers from our project. We've got a town that was built for the direct and indirect labor that is required. It's only about a 45-minute drive along a paved road to our project. You look down, you see paved roads. You look up, you see electric lines. You don't see that level of infrastructure around major projects that are that close to Tidewater and our end customer. So right now, this is a perfect storm for a project like ours, for a project that is levered to we call is the most important critical commodity in copper, and
Absolutely.
also the most critical currency in gold.
I love it. Well, you're hitting on some notes there that really speak volumes to me about the trends and how that could economically impact our industry, such as what you said about smelters there. There could very well come a time when those companies want to invest in and secure their material that they need for their businesses. That's one thing. You also talked about what is called onshoring, which is countries are now, for a long time it was globalization. Now people are starting to think, well, we want to look after this stuff internally in our own country because that gives us a lot more flexibility. For example, in the United States, you've got a strategic reserve of oil. Why don't they have a strategic reserve of copper? Why aren't they mining more copper? Right now, they only mine in the United States about 50% of the copper that they need for their own industry, internal. And so these onshoring, these smelter issues, the desire for countries to have that security in their own country is becoming trends that could really make a big difference in how I used to call it getting creative on how you build these things. There's a lot of potential for getting creative with some very well-heeled companies out there that could need what you have.
So, Alan, you hit it right on the head, and you gave a great example about the US. So, let me give you another example because it's just recent in my travels, which is Korea. We all know what the ties and affiliation to the Western world, the US, that Korea has. In fact, I'm being from Korean descent, I do have to sort of make the remark that I am eternally grateful for what, the Americans, the Canadians, United Nations did during the Korean War to effectively liberate and help the Koreans establish what today is a world-class technology economy. They create everything from cars to washing machines to chips to this is one of the height of precedence around what you can do when you can help facilitate the growth of a country rather. But 100% of their commodities that they use for all these products that they produce comes from offshore. And get this, 90% of that 100% comes from China. Think about the world politics and what is actually evolving right now in terms of how the world is starting to align. This is an incredibly shocking statistic that I bet you most people that watch our show don't understand. And so if you do not have that security, that commodity security from within the country, which is impossible for them to have, given that it's a very small country, but a very prolific country, then you have to get it from somebody and somewhere. And right now, 90% of those commodities are coming from China. So think about that. Think about sort of where the world is turning, how the world is turning, how the world is aligning right now, and where that next level of demand is going to be coming from. It's going to be coming from stable tier one countries that have strong, rich relationships with
Many
Asian
countries,
nations that are have affiliations with the Western world.
yeah.
And so that's why I think this is a critical thing to understand, and it's happening, and it's being recognized in real time. They just implemented a policy in 2024 that is meant to address this dichotomy that they would like to change. They would like to change this paradigm that they currently find themselves in right now. All this to say is that coming back to Northisle, we have the commodities. I agree with you, by the way. I think copper is going to be the next world economic indicator alongside with oil, as it should be. So we have copper, we have gold, the critical currency, and we have a product that is incredibly important to the Western world's economic survival.
Well, you've talked about your plans, your immediate stuff. I think some of the catalysts are to continue to go in a dual path, if you will, exploration. I'm always excited to hear about that and development. So let's go a little bit down the road of development. You touched on that you're Korean. I'm First Nations, and so it was very good of me to hear about your efforts on the First Nations front because that the First Nations relationship and the relationship with the communities around you are very important to get those on side to get the ability to develop. Why don't you talk a little bit more about those kind of efforts?
Sure. So back in 2022, we initiated a program and agreements with our First Nation partners that were quite novel, and which is a bit of a shame, quite frankly. But what it rooted in was recognizing First Nation governments first, right? And so we call them consent agreements, whereby we essentially ensure that we have our First Nations partners' approvals for anything we do on the land prior to going through the permitting process at the government, at the provincial governments, and at the federal levels. And so, what we believe is this is a framework for future larger agreements that will enable us to get expedited behavior. What does that mean? Well, a lot of people think that means having, projects being pushed down the throats of First Nations. That's not what it means. It means that with the ability to go arm in arm with an application, a permit application with our First Nations partner, we inherently get expedited behavior from the provincial governments. And we saw that through the exploration permits and 5-year, multi-year access-based permits, which, is significant. And we are able to get those in 14 weeks with our First
Wow.
Nations consent. So that is the behavior that's now stimulated the government, the BC government, to effectively say, hey, this works. This actually works. If you have First Nations participation, and that can mean, especially mean through equity and project participation as well, then you will get your permits expedited. That was the direct relation that the BC government said. And yes, of course, that's not going to fit the mold with every project. In fact, it probably won't fit the mold with most projects in British Columbia. But that's fine too from the government's, well, from our perspective, because what that means is that then they prioritize the projects that do have that consent and will to move a project forward quickly. And so with that level of focus, then the government can actually process their side of the permits much faster. So we're seeing a tremendous evolution of this, this model that we quite frankly started in 2022, really come into fruition. And, it is going to be slow going, and there needs to be trust established between all form of governments and proponents such as ours. But we believe that, we're at that epicenter, we're at that forefront of that dialogue, and certainly of that policy that's now being evolved into policy. And we're starting to see really significant examples whereby the government is effectively helping establish these equity partnerships for First Nation groups into projects that with the end goal of expediting projects. So it's a complex triangle to complete, but it's happening right now. And this is something that, we've been talking about and the governments have been talking about for years now. I think the political environment now suggests that it's the
The
end of
time is
talk and it's
now.
time for action.
Well, you've touched on some things that I've always advised in my 30 some years in the business. And having worked with companies to secure permits, and I love hearing what you're talking about because they're the three pillars that I always advise companies to follow and have trying to be a proponent for 32 years in the business, which it starts out with respect. It also includes meaningful consultation, and it also includes inclusion. And if you get those things right, you can move things forward very rapidly. I've seen it in my career. You're just explaining, I personally went into areas where they said, you're never going to get a permit to develop that project or explore that project. I went to those communities. I talked to the elders. I talked to the community. I told them about my grandfather's experience or my great grandfather's experience as on a trap line. I told them that if you would have took a piece of rock to him and said, "Have you ever seen this piece of rock?" He would take you to the exact place where he
Wow.
saw that piece of rock. And
Wow.
so when I use that explanation, it's because what I don't think the mining industry, I don't think they get those three pillars very well, but I also don't think that they get the inherent talents that First Nations have on the land doing what is called
Totally.
old-fashioned geology. You walk
Totally.
and you look down.
Yeah.
That's how mines are found. And I love to hear what you guys are talking about. And it's always been a dream of mine that that there is programs set up that take those youth and they teach them how to do prospecting and other things all along, right from the ground all the way to the boardroom, because First Nations people are very entrepreneurial. They may not have done entrepreneurship like the rest of the world, but they've been entrepreneurs for thousands of years. And so I love hearing what you're talking about there, Sam.
Thanks so much, Allan. I gotta say two more things around that because they're so spot on with what you're saying. So in the areas that we work in, the First Nation bands have historically thought of copper as being the precious metal. It's not gold. And
Exactly.
the reason behind that, I don't, because there's so much abundance of it, they would actually mine placer copper. As a guy that's been in the mining industry for a long time, I've
All you hear
actually
about is placer gold.
placer gold, but actually being able to get placer copper from the local streams and then create all of their, these
Art.
beautiful artifacts and
Yeah.
shields that, that are worn by the chiefs. And that to me shows the geological significance of an area, right? That is why copper was the most important commodity in their lives. And then the second thing that resonates with what you're saying is this opportunity to really enrich and grow a community. So in our area, unfortunately, it was defined by mining, fishing, and forestry, and most of those industries have contracted significantly. And so we find ourselves in a hungry area for industry, for natural resource extraction industry. And so we view that as, again, another major asset that we can have. We can have people that want to get employed in the industry. We obviously have a significant amount of First Nation people working for us. But in addition to that, our one of our directors who just joined us, Alex Davidson, the Mining Hall of Famer, has actually put into place a $1 million fund, endowment fund, to give out scholarships to First Nations individuals that are interested in joining the mining industry. And it's not specific to just Northisle. It's for any First Nations individual who has an interest in being an engineer, a geologist, a technician. And this scholarship is meant to build out the breadth and depth of workers that we would need for our industry. And we're starting with our First Nation communities, which I think is fantastic because it is an incredible industry to be in. As I said, I've been in this industry for now 30 years. It is one of the greatest, if not the greatest industries to be in Canada. This is how we define ourselves. This is certainly how the world looks at us. They look at us as a resource for critical metals, which has now become the most important thing in the survival of these countries across the world. So we are in an incredible spot right now, and we really want to use this opportunity to make sure that all of our rights holders and landholders participate in this economic opportunity.
That's awesome to hear. And, if you ever need someone like me who's been in the business for 32 years and made my living in it, and I'm First Nations, I think sometimes the youth just need someone like me to go in there and say, you can do it too. I've done it. I've been in this business for 32 years. And you have all these inherent talents that are not being utilized. And when the elders start hearing that as well, well, I'll just say this to you, Sam. If you ever need my help pounding that drum, my phone is, I'm an email away, and I'd be glad to do it. And you're right about the long term. Like if you go to the Museum of Anthropology in Vancouver at UBC, you'll see how the First Nations of British Columbia have incorporated copper into their culture. And it's an important part of their culture, the art and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm getting goosebumps talking about this stuff, Tom.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Alan, I am absolutely going to take you up on your offer. to really charge our communities and our First Nation groups in the direction that we want to help everybody be part of.
It's just good business, you know. If you do those three pillars I talked about right, look at what the governments, the provincial and federal governments are going to do to help get move this forward. And we all want to see that happen throughout Canada.
Agreed. I have purpose in this on multiple facets, Alan, but the reality is the greatest asset when I started 5 years ago was the will of the First Nation communities for this project to move ahead. The first people I met with was were the chiefs, and they were very much encouraged and, waving me in to take this opportunity. I can tell you, I would not be as bold as you, Alan, and go into a community that perhaps, didn't support something or perhaps didn't even know about what the opportunities were, because I know how difficult it is to change will. And that's not my job. My job is not to change anybody's will. My job is to ensure that if you want it, if you want this opportunity, my job is to connect that opportunity to real returns and economic benefit. That is what I kind of view my responsibilities are, and I've had nothing but good feelings and significant support around that will. And of course, my job now is to convert that will into consent.
You're hitting all the right tones there, Sam. Northisle is very fortunate to have you leading the company. You're also a big shareholder in the company, so you're aligned with the shareholders. And one other thing, I know you've been very kind with your time. We originally planned for about 30 minutes and it's lasted longer, but I'm just enjoying this conversation so much. One thing that I really think also sets you apart, Sam, is that you've embraced digital marketing. And these days, there's a lot of investors out there that want to hear about opportunities, and they're on the social media platforms. They're on X, they're on YouTube, and they're looking for content. And I really appreciate your commitment to digital marketing because for one big reason is it helps your cost of capital. If you end up being top of mind for a lot of investors, and I think that that's another trend that our industry needs to embrace, and I'm really admire your commitment to that, Sam.
I appreciate that, and it certainly is a learning experience. I came from a very institutional background, and this last 5 years has been a eye-awakening experience. This last deal that we did, the $40 million deal, was pretty much institutional only deal, which is a bit of an accomplishment for us. But I do remain committed around making sure that this is not just an institutionally held story. I think with a lot of junior companies, well, if they're lucky enough to get that institutional, uh, sophisticated holdings like we have now, they tend to tail off on the retail high net worth market. And I have to say, as an investment banker over the last 20-25 years, I've seen a significant migration away from small cap specialist institutions. There's been a significant contraction in that space, and unless you're, billion-dollar plus market cap company, the institutions typically don't trade your stock.
Right.
And so that's something that we all have to be very aware of. And I do think that there is a very important, continuing importance for us to recognize that and to ensure that all shareholders and stakeholders and landholders and rights holders are addressed as it relates to how we're progressing a project. We've just announced and closed the offering last month. but we are pounding the pavement in terms of telling the story. I just got back from Japan and Korea last week. I'll be at Beaver Creek and then the Denver Gold Show, which is a senior gold producer show. Typically, small junior companies aren't invited to it, but we've been going for the last 5 years. I'll also be on the road in the first week of October with Michael Gentili, one of our largest shareholders. He's been with us since the day that I joined, and we are now Michael's largest shareholding by value. And we're happy to, again, market with people that really truly have skin in the game. We don't pay him or anybody for our marketing rights. We just, like the Wheaton deal, we're always constantly looking for partners that are aligned with what we want to do and what we believe, how we believe we can create value. So we'll be doing that, and then I'll be back into Zurich in November for the Zurich Gold Show. So it's a really pivotal time for us, not only to get the project going as quickly as possible, including the district play, but to get the story out. We're starting to get that momentum and that traction because of the broader audience that you've just talked about. And we're going to continue, we're going to double our efforts over the next little while to ensure that we keep
They
that
go
momentum.
hand in hand. Those retail people, they can help attract the institutions, and the institutions attract the retail. So it's a symbiotic relationship, and
100%.
that's great work, Sam. Well, thank you very much. Did you have a closing comment?
Look, I mean, this is continues to be a transformational year for Northisle Copper and Gold. We've now hit I guess, the first stage gate, which we are now fully financed to pursue our strategic objectives as aggressively as I've just described. And so stay tuned. The next 6 to 12 months are going to be filled with some of the results that we endeavor to build our company off of.
You're one of the things I like to look for in a company that I pick is catalyst rich. And so I think you will have a lot to talk about in the future, Sam. Thank you very much for being so kind with your time.
My pleasure, Alan. It was really a good chat. Thank you.
As always, folks, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important for you to speak with your financial advisors, do your homework. I'm a big proponent of doing your homework. That's why I do these shows. It's part of the homework process. And a key reason is I think well-informed investors don't make as many emotional decisions based on short-term fluctuations in metals and prices of stocks, and they make investments that are based on logic and information. And so I really think you want to be a well-informed investor, and being well-informed on North Isle, I think is a great one to be well-informed on. So I hope that I've been able to start that process for you today. On that note, Sam, you have a great day, and everybody else as well.
Thanks, Alan.